Hey everybody, here we are back on She's Got the Keys, and today's episode is a little bit different.
Yes, I love what we're sharing about today because I happen to live near one of these trails. We're going to be talking about some of the greatest walking, biking, cycling trails in the greater Seattle area. That's a huge thing that people love to do here, and there's so many great ones, and we're going to discuss them.
Yeah, when we first moved from Colorado, one of my favorite things was to find as many walking trails as I could be out of St. Bernard, and I knew that Washington was home to some of the largest biking trails across the United States, and I just wanted to get out there and see different neighborhoods. So Sarah and I have focused in on 4 of the biggest, largest biking trails. There are so many more though, you guys. We could have just kept going and going and going, but we're gonna keep it in 30 minutes. Let's be real.
And some of these, kind of will reference some parks that you might see. We're going to do probably a whole other episode, kind of like the best of parks and dog parks and all those kinds of things. So we might not get into all of that these trails lead into today, but it's all going to connect because there's so many great outdoor activities in our area, even though it's generally raining most of the time. But you know what? No bad weather, just bad clothes.
That's right. You got to get the gear.
Yeah.
Get the gear and you're set.
Yes. You want to kick it off with one of your trails?
Okay. The first one that I'm talking about is the Interurban Trail, and it has 2 parts to it, which I was not aware of until I started doing the research.
I learned a lot about these trails while doing research that I didn't know.
I only thought that it was from Green Lake up to Everett, but I found out there's also a southern end to this trail, which is down in Tequila, and it goes all the way, well, they're trying to make it go all the way to Auburn. But the Interurban Trail is mostly paved. It's like 10 to 12 feet wide, paved.
Oh, nice.
Walkways for you to kind of be able to bike ride all the way from Green Lake up to Everett, like I said. And they have, it's 26 miles about. And a lot of it actually follows along I-5 corridor. So if you want something that's more in the trees, I wouldn't necessarily recommend the Interurban. But if you wanted to go really far on a bike ride, this is a great one.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah. It also goes by quite a few lakes, and where we like to pick it up is near Lake Ballinger, which is close to our home there. So you can kind of, if you want to, do little loops and back and forth on it. But
nice. Do you walk it, or what do you?
I biked it before I had the Peloton. So I was biking it for long distances, and for that it's great. And one of the sites that I looked at recommended, take the 26.5 mile bike ride and then get the Link light rail back.
Oh, nice. So you don't have to commit to a 50-mile bike ride.
That's right. If you don't want to.
I love that. Personally, I would love that.
Do the work first and then hit the trails back.
Yeah.
One of the things that it doesn't have a whole lot of that some of the other trails do is places along the trail where you could stop and get food. So you really have to kind of hop off. It's very much kind of a commuter trail, if you will. If you want to get to downtown or up north, this would be a good one for you.
Gotcha.
They do have quite a bit of artwork though along the way. That's fun. I like that.
Like on
route. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So like through Shoreline, they've installed all of these kind of outdoor sculptures that you can go past, and murals, and so that makes it a little bit more interesting. Cool. And I also think it's more accessible because it's paved for folks who are maybe disabled or want to just use their wheels, because some of the other trails we talk about are not as paved.
Yeah, like there's a ton of accessible trails in our area, but you do your research, like make sure that what you're looking at is accessible for whatever activity you want to do.
I'm going to reference my notes here because I am not a computer. Yeah. But I did find out that it was started in 1910. So there was a railway that ran from Green Lake, actually all the way from Tukwila up to Snohomish County up in Everett. And so they built this railway in 1910, but by 1938 the use of cars was so predominant that the railways became a little bit obsolete. And it wasn't until the 90s that they started to kind of convert those over to those railway tracks into these paved walkways that people could go on. And in that amount of time, since the 90s, they have tried to create more of a consistent line. So if you look this trail up on Great Trails or any of those sites, you're going to notice that there are some areas that you have to kind of hop off, go down a street for a little bit. It's well marked, there's tons of signs, but it's not a consistent, non-stop trail. But the city of Kent is trying to increase the southern line so that it goes all the way down to Auburn and Puyallup. And Mount Lake Terrace and Snohomish County put in tons of money to make sure that it was kind of a consistent line up north. There's a few parts on Shoreline that could still be done, especially that from Shoreline into the Lake Ballinger area. It's a little bit of you're going over Edmonds Way, Ballinger Way, whatever you want to call it.
Gotcha. So I could potentially in the future ride a bike from my neck of the woods up to your neck of the woods.
No doubt.
Which I probably wouldn't do.
Get a motorized
But it's
bike.
an option.
Yeah, get one of those Lime bikes.
Yeah.
Right?
Instead of my Peloton. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a really far trail.
Yeah. How about yours? Which one are you on?
So I'm going to touch on the Green River Trail, which is also a little bit down south. This one stretches from Tukwila to Kent, so a little bit more in my neck of the woods. Kind of parallels Green River, which if you're ever down in that south center Tukwila area, hard to miss it. You're constantly crossing over bridges over the Green River. I do a lot of my errands down there, so I see it all the time. The trail kind of connects with a lot of other regional trails, including the interurban trail. So you could access the Green River Trail from the interurban trail that we just discussed. It's got the Duwamish Trail and the Sue's Creek Trail. The Sue's Creek Trail is in my neck of the woods, which is really long. One of my absolute favorite views of Mount Rainier down where I live is from the Sue's Creek Trail. Kind of a little bit follows some of the power lines, which is why there's a kind of a clearing for this big trail, but it is the absolute best view of Mount Rainier. Kind of blows my mind that even though I'm not that close to Mount Rainier, just being 30 minutes south of the city, how beautiful and how massive it is.
Huge.
And fun fact, a few times a year when it's clear enough, I can see just the bit of Rainier from my driveway, which is something we didn't know when we moved in.
A home with a view.
You know what? It is a home with a view. Probably not putting that on any sort of advertisement for my house if we sell, but you can see it a little bit.
So how far of a walk is it from your home to this trail?
So to access, so if I wanted to get on the Sue's Creek Trail from my house, there's a probably couple different access points. The one that I pass the most often is going to be just past Meeker Middle School, which if you're in the Kent area, you know where that is. There's a parking lot right there. But there's a lot of different places you can catch onto the trail. And I'm actually not even sure how long the Sue's Creek Trail is, but that trail itself is fairly long. I think it's about 7 to 10 miles. Someone's going to come on here and tell me it's different. But what I'm really relating this to is how the Green River Trail connects to the Sue's Creek Trail, which is in my neighborhood. It's mostly paved, which is great. So it's also accessible for cyclists and pedestrians. Also really suited well for strollers, wheelchairs, if you want to rollerblade. I see a lot of people doing strollers through there, which is great because you want an activity to do during the day that's free.
Get out of the house.
That's free and not necessarily around a ton of other people if that's something that you're not looking for. So we love that. An interesting fact that I found was that the flood protection in history, so the trail runs along levees that were built for flood control along the Green River. And the historical significance of this is that the river and the surrounding areas, they play a really key role in the development of agriculture and industry in King County. So
very cool.
It's always interesting how trails sort of come about. They tend to be a byproduct of something else that they were achieving.
Yeah.
Like railways. Like when I touch on Burke Gilman, it was a huge railway system that was converted to trails. So you get a fun byproduct from something that was created for a totally other function. And what a great benefit that it's something you can do outside and enjoy in our area.
Yeah, I definitely needed the trails when we moved into Edmonds because we live in like cul-de-sac nation. Everything is blocked off. You can't really get through anywhere.
Gotcha.
So making sure that there was trails close by was so important when we were looking at homes, and like finding those snickle ways between to get to these trails was really important because I have 2 young boys and I just could not stand to be inside all day. So.
I had a client who bought a house very close to where I live, and one of her like absolute requirements that it was near walking trails that she could walk to and not drive to. And we ended up finding her a home near the Lake Youngs Trail, which if you're from the Kent Fairwood area, it's close to Sue's Creek, but it's its own trail, and it actually has, it's not paved, it's gravel, and it kind of goes along the Lake Youngs Reservoir, which is a major reservoir providing water for the city of Seattle and King County in general. But it's got this huge trail through the woods.
Yeah.
And you can ride your horse on it. So
Wow, okay.
oftentimes you will find a lot of horses. Where I live is sort of like this juxtaposition of sort of country living and city life. So there are tons of horses on that trail. My husband and I will run on that trail and we inevitably will see 10 to 15 deer and 2 horses.
Wow, isn't that magical?
Yeah.
Here in the city.
It's fun.
I think it's really cool. Okay. My next trail is actually the Lake Washington Trail, which is one of the largest trails here in the city, and I found out that it's 128 years old. And what I learned was there was, back in the Revolutionary era, there was this huge excitement around bicycles. And when Seattle was built, it was mostly built on wood planks. There wasn't a whole lot of brick around, which wasn't great for the bicyclists because when you drive over, your tires are going to get stuck in the mud.
Right.
So they created this association and had the people who own bikes would pay a tax into the association, and they used the tax dollars to create the first part of the Lake Washington Trail, which was made out of bricks and coal that they would use over to put into the mud because it was so thick. Isn't that wild?
That is so wild.
And over the years, the excitement around bicycles kind of tapered off as cars became more readily available. And then there was a huge surge again with the bicyclists in the 1950s where people are thinking, okay, the cost of driving the car is too expensive. I still want to get around. So they're using these tax dollars to create this trail around Lake Washington. And actually, nothing else was there beforehand. So as they created the trails and people saw new places across that area is when we started seeing infill of homes. So the bicyclists were there even before the homes got there, which in my mind I'm like, whoa. They talk about like discovering Discovery Park, right?
Oh my God, can you imagine? Wow.
Like just coming over that bluff and seeing it and being like, oh my gosh, we should live here. And that's kind of how it all developed. And now the trail goes all the way around the lake. And there was a while there where the floating bridge was being built, and they decided, okay, we're going to put a bike trail right through this floating bridge, which connected the whole loop together. But back in the day, they actually had sheriffs that would stand on bicycles, and they would tax you for going too fast on the bike path.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like these were like real thoroughfares that they were creating even before there was ever any development out there. So I think it kind of highlights the reason why Sarah and I want to focus on trails is because so much of what we value as homeowners doesn't actually pertain to the home itself. And
we've touched on that too. It's so much more about what's in the surrounding area. You're buying an area. Really.
Yeah, and so to be around these neighborhoods that were developed with the outdoors in mind is so lovely, and I love this journey that I went on. I've never done the entire loop. I'm just going to be real with you.
Oh, me either.
I've done 13.2 miles of it, and that's when I was doing my half marathon, and I did the part of it that like starts in Kirkland and then works its way over into Juanita Beach area.
I think that is what I have done as well when I was also training for a half marathon.
Oh,
I think that's the trail.
So you can go straight. You can just keep going.
Yeah. And it's paved, right? It's all paved, that section?
It's paved,
okay.
yes, yeah. And there are parts of it that aren't as paved, and I guess there are parts that are a little bit more rocky as you get into Bellevue and down south into Kent area that are a little bit more strenuous. But I couldn't really speak to that because I haven't done those parts of it.
Right.
I feel like, 13 miles in, 13 miles back, that's plenty for me.
Oh, yeah. 13 miles back. I'm talking, I did the 13 miles total. I don't know what I did on the way back. Maybe we halved it there and halved it back. But that's awesome.
Yeah, and it was beautiful. And it's along, there are river portions that feed into the lake that you get to see, and some less developed areas. You're going to come across a ton of cyclists because, again, it's such a large loop, so it makes for a great day trip if that's what you're into.
Nice. Awesome. I'm going to touch on the Burt Gilman Trail, which is probably one of the most, which is part of it, and also one of the probably more well-known trails just by name, I would think, in the Seattle area, just because it kind of touches through like the UW Village area and up through Sandpoint Way, and everybody just sort of has kind of always heard of the Burt Gilman Trail. At least that's the one I've always heard the most of. I love the through line that a lot of these trails were from old railways. So the trail follows the former route of the Seattle, Lakeshore, and Eastern Railway, which was originally built in the 1880s. So kind of similar timeline that you were talking about.
Yep.
The railway was later acquired by the Great Northern Railway before it was converted into the trail in the 1970s, becoming one of the first rail trails in the country.
Cool.
Which is amazing. What a great way to like reuse a path that had already been like forged with so much effort, right? We know, like, if you've ever watched a history documentary, this was not easy work making these railway tracks when they were coming about, especially, across the whole country. And being able to repurpose all that hard work into a trail that people could enjoy, and this is what people move to the Pacific Northwest for, as far as outdoor activities. So I just love that through line. The length is about 20 miles, and it goes from Ballard in Seattle goes through Fremont, the U District, it goes through Lake Forest Park, and then it connects to the Sammamish River Trail in Bothell. It is a major commuting trail as well. I actually have had clients who were like, hey, I actually want to live near the Burt Gilman Trail because
I gotta get to work.
I ride my bike to work.
Yep.
And that is my thoroughfare.
Yeah, it's packed all the time.
Yes, it is super busy.
But it's also a great place. Like, I bring the kids down in the spring to watch the bald eagles because they actually...
Yeah, I have a list of wildlife that you might spot, and the top one is bald eagles for this exact reason. And herons, which you'll see, they hunt there. Beavers and families of otters, like when you get along to the lakefronts. So, let's see. So the origin of the name was obviously after the people who founded it.
Two white guys.
Yeah, two white guys, Thomas Burke and Daniel Gilman.
They were white guys.
Two key figures in the development of the original railway. So the trail was dedicated essentially to them. There's some key access points and parks to get onto the trail. Gasworks Park.
Yep.
Matthews Beach Park,
which has a huge playground. And
we're going to touch on that when we talk about like parks and playgrounds and recreational areas, because that's like, we are rich with that in the greater Seattle area and out in surrounding areas, which is, again, awesome. Like, if we could do an entire episode of just like free places you can go to do activities, like how useful is that for people to have?
Amazing. I wish that somebody had that when I was with the boys, because
I
created my own spreadsheet of like, where are their soaking ponds and where are their beaches and where are their playgrounds.
Where can you take your dog to? Where can't you take your dog to? So we're going to touch all on that. This is just a little intro into the best ofs. You can also access it on Log Boom Park in Kenmore. I've never actually heard of Log Boom Park, but I know where Kenmore is. You're going to see Lake Washington, you're going to see Lake Union, and you're going to pass by, tons of forested areas, kind of wetlands areas, which is where you're going to see a lot of that wildlife. You also can hit the Burke Museum of Natural History and Culture, which is located at the University of Washington campus.
And it's actually really cool for kids too. I've taken them there.
Awesome. So you're the greatest resource because you have kids. It's not a phase of my life yet, but there's so much good information. I feel like when you have kids, you have to be so creative about new places that you're going to explore. Like when you have people in town and you do the touristy things that you would never do, but you're like, I got to find something interesting in my town, and then you end up learning something that you didn't do before.
Yeah, for me it was all about staying busy. I just found that if I got too bored doing the same thing, then I was miserable. So finding things that were free and available for them to go check out that would be exciting. Sometimes it's just being in a new space, you know? Other times you find something really magical and you're like, nobody knows about this, I can't believe it.
That's awesome.
So the Burke Gilman is one that we've used quite a bit, and we used to put the boys in one of those trailers. And you could ride it into kind of close to university. There were places that you could hop off and actually have lunch. And I'd get myself like a chicken burger because I had worked my booty off hauling that dead weight in the back, you know. And they would be like passed out, like strapped in, but like passed out because they've been bumping the whole.
But it kind of lulls them to sleep. And you got to work out. It's because there's so much more to real estate than just the home. It's all about the surrounding areas. We just want to make sure you have all the information that you could possibly have, and if this sparks some more questions for you that you didn't think to ask yourself, like, I hope that that's what this episode brings and the episodes to come, because we're going to talk about really awesome stuff next.
Like food.
Oh
my gosh.
Can't wait to talk about that.
So many good restaurants and parks and attractions.
Beaches.
So follow along, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.